This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News 9. English news as it should be.
Welcome to News 9. You're watching On Point with me. I'm Kartikeya Sharma. On Point 1, we discuss why Dulhasti Stage-II hydropower project has made Islamabad nervous. On Point 2, we discuss the widespread protest in Iran, the threat issued by Trump, and Iran's counter is regime change possible in Iran. On Point 3, we discuss the government's crackdown on red terror. And now let's take a quick look at the headlines. Major lapses exposed in Indore's contaminated water death case. The water that killed 15 was unfit for consumption. 2019 report shows civic body was warned repeatedly but to no avail. War of words between Zomato CEO and AIIMS doctor over gig workers strike. Dipender Goyal supports peaceful protest, denies pressure on workers. AIIMS doctor highlights safety risks and defends workers' right to strike. Shah Rukh Khan faces storm for signing Bangladesh fast bowler Mustafizur Rahman for IPL 2026. New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani meddles in India's internal affairs, pens note for Delhi riot accused Umar Khalid. Dhurandhar continues its successful run, surpasses 1,100 crore collection worldwide at the box office. Pakistan is nervous. India's approval of the Dulhasti Stage-II hydropower project on the Chenab has sent chill down the spine of Islamabad. Pakistan claims New Delhi cannot misuse its limited allowance of western river waters under the Indus Waters Treaty. It alleges that no prior technical detail was shared. Islamabad has dared to seek clarification from India through the Indus Commissioners. So what exactly is Dulhasti Stage-II? Dulhasti Stage-II is a 260 megawatt run-of-the-river hydropower project in Jammu and Kashmir's Kishtwar district. It sits on Chenab, uses an underground powerhouse and builds on the existing Dulhasti Stage-I infrastructure that was commissioned in 2007. The project is also linked to the Pakal Dul hydro project on the Marusudar, which feeds water in the Dulhasti reservoir, making it part of a larger hydropower cascade on the Chenab. Together, these projects add clean electricity, stabilize the grid, and improve how the basin is managed. India's position is clear. Dulhasti is fully within the hydropower rights permitted under the treaty. New Delhi says these are run-of-the-river projects, not storage dams, and that objections are part of Pakistan's long pattern of blocking even legitimate development. But Pakistan has reason to be nervous this time because it is happening after a major policy shift. Following the Pahalgam terror attack, India has put routine engagement under the Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance, saying water cooperation cannot continue as usual while terrorism persists. India has stopped data sharing, paused joint mechanisms, and signaled that it will prioritize the permissible use of western rivers while reviewing treaty provisions in light of security, climate, and development needs.
You know, many years ago, we agreed to a water arrangement, water sharing arrangement, because the belief, the underpinning of that was, it was a gesture of goodwill, because for good neighborliness we were doing it. But if you had decades of terrorism, there is no good neighborliness. If there is no good neighborliness, you don't get the benefits of that good neighborliness. You can't say, I will, please share water with me, but I will continue terrorism with you. That's not reconcilable.
भारत ने तय कर लिया है खून और पानी एक साथ नहीं बहेंगे। अब देशवासियों को भली भांति पता चला है कि सिंधु का समझौता कितना अन्यायपूर्ण है, कितना एक तरफा है। भारत से निकलती नदियों का पानी दुश्मनों के खेत को सींच रहा है और मेरे देश के किसान, मेरे देश की धरती पानी के बिना प्यासी है।
On this issue, I am joined by Ambassador Veena Sikri, former High Commissioner of India to Bangladesh, and Major General Rajan Kochar. And the big questions which I will put up to my guests are: why is Indus water important to Pakistan? How is Pakistan affected by the abeyance? Can we continue to build on India's side of Chenab River, India's side of the Indus River? Can we continue to build on them? And is there any international repercussion? Straight to Ambassador Veena Sikri. Madam, I ran Prime Minister's bite. And I ran the bite of the External Affairs Minister. Prime Minister, in his previous rally, he said, "Ye samjhauta ek tarfa tha." Do you think that the Indus Water Treaty, when signed, was one-sided?
Completely, it was very one-sided. In fact, India has been provided, has been allowed to use very little of the total water available in the Indus River basin. 3 rivers, Indus, Jhelum and Chenab, were given fully to Pakistan, the western rivers, and the other 3, Ravi, Bias and Satluj, have been given to India. But even so, like as you know, even for this Dulhasti-I project, I remember dealing with this at a time when I was in Paris, because the French builders were also involved in that. Not only was it stricken by terrorism and delayed in huge amount, but if the Pakistanis were repeatedly raising objections, they wouldn't let us build. Even after the project had been cleared, they would raise objections, delay the whole project. So I think that in addition to the fact that this is such an unequal treaty, and at that time it was raised in Parliament, it became a big issue politically in the 1960s. This was a big issue, and I think even Prime Minister Nehru spoke on it several times, because it was very embarrassing that the World Bank should have negotiated this treaty, as was the negotiator or the mastermind in the negotiations, and they made India conclude such an unfair treaty. In addition to that, in the implementation of the treaty, India has faced a lot of problems, and Dulhasti-I is one example of that. And there are so many others, the Vular Barrage, for example, so many other projects where constantly we are being told you cannot do this. It means constant delays. And this is all when we want to give water to the people of Jammu and Kashmir. And then from Jammu and Kashmir also to the people of Punjab and other states. So for the people of Jammu and Kashmir, for whom, Pakistan keeps talking about undying love and undying affection for them, even on the question of water for the people of Jammu and Kashmir, they have never taken the side of the people. They've always made it political, and always, told India that you're doing it, and made it very unpleasant. And I think that this putting the treaty in abeyance was a long time in the coming. There was a big debate in India, I think, for many years.
Do you think it's affecting them, Pakistan, keeping the treaty in abeyance?
They are very apprehensive. Yes, it has. We know, because we're not obliged to give them any water. Of course, it is true that the water which is there in the river, it's not that anybody's stopping it. It's going, some of it. But certainly now, in January, you look to the summer season, you look to when the snow melt comes in and then it dries up, and then you're looking. They know, they're waiting for that. They know that it'll be a big problem, because another big reason in Pakistan is that whatever the water of the Indus River and all its tributaries that goes into Pakistan, the bulk of it is being used in Punjab by the military. And the army, and each of their army officers have huge farms. They actually overuse the water which comes in the river to them. And with the result that very little of the water goes downstream to Sindh, for example, to the province of Sindh. And it is so bad that I believe now in the summer months, the Indus is virtually drying up. And because of the silt it carries, I believe now somewhere near Karachi, there's a kind of a hump that's built up because of depositing of silt,
Okay.
that the river, in fact, sometimes cannot even reach the sea, because it has to cross this big hump. We've seen that, of course, even in the eastern river, this problem is there. So this is a huge problem for Pakistan, and the Pakistan military is particularly concerned. But I think India is fully within its rights. I think it has been analyzed and there has been a substantial change in the conditions because Pakistan is refusing to end terror. And what our Prime Minister said is very correct. You know that the water and blood cannot flow
Yes.
together. And they're refusing to listen. They are not saying a word about ending terrorism. They're not saying a word about, negotiating that. But they're talking about IWT all the time, Indus Waters Treaty all the time. I think this is completely one-sided. So, whatever you get, you put it in your back pocket and you put out your hand asking for more. I don't think that's going to continue at all. And this is an irrevocable change. Unless there's forward movement on terrorism, on Pakistan's decision to end counter-terrorism,
Okay.
terrorism and to, India is fully within its right to exercise every kind of counter-terrorist measure that it does, including putting the IWT in abeyance.
General Kocha, is it correct that the Indus water also plays a crucial role in context of their military preparedness, the way the canal system operates in Punjab?
Thank you, Karthik. This discussion is extremely important because I tend to agree with what Ambassador Sikri is actually saying that Pakistan Army has large businesses and most of them are centered on agriculture. And 26% of the Pakistan's GDP is generated through agriculture because Pakistan is an agrarian economy basically. 90% of Pakistan's surface water comes from the Indus water system, and almost 80% of the cultivated land depends on the Indus water. So you can see that how paranoid Pakistan is. A moment we talk about abeyance or restrictions, because so far India has not restricted the water at all. And what is important to understand here is that run of the river, Pakistan needs to understand, because before this dispute, there are already 7 disputes which have been raised by Pakistan. And I just carried out a bit of analysis. 5 of the disputes relate to the Chenab River. And that actually substantiates the point what Ambassador Sikri is actually saying, is because Chenab River flows into Punjab. And Pakistan is constructing dams like the Mangla Dam has been constructed by Pakistan to stop the flow of water into Sindh. And if you remember last year, much before this abeyance of this treaty, there was a massive agitation of people in Sindh who objected to the disproportionate sharing of water by Pakistan, because majority of the water is being diverted to the Punjab, and a major canal system is presently being built to divert the water into Punjab. So if you look at this treaty per se, point number 1, it hurts the military a lot.
Okay.
Point number 2, it hurts the Pakistan economy because it is going to affect employment of people if the agriculture actually comes down. And the third most important aspect we have to see is that it's a very, very disproportionate treaty. I'll just give you a small figures and then I think the viewers can understand. The Pakistan share of these 3 rivers, Indus, Jhelum and Chenab, is 138 MAF. And India's share of the 3 rivers, Ravi, Beas and Satluj, is only 33 MAF. So apart from that 80-20 ratio of the western rivers, the eastern rivers itself are contributing very less water to India. And you see how the population of India, how the demographic changes have taken place. So this Water Treaty should not be always linked to only one aspect, that terrorism and bad neighbors, because we have been stressing upon Pakistan for the last 15 years for changes in this treaty, and Pakistan has not been listening.
Okay.
So I think now this water has flown over the head, as we say it, and India had to resort to this strong measures to make Pakistan listen, because Pakistan was just not bothered.
But this brings me to the other question, Ambassador Sikri. Then why is Pakistan saying that this is a national security? You know, we'll destroy the dams. You know, is it just shrill cacophony, or there is more to it?
No, they are coming up and saying that this is a national security issue to them because, as General pointed out just now, water, even a small drop in the water supply to Pakistan will affect the economy seriously. So they're trying to make that into a national security check. But I think the point is to always argue with them rationally, or with the world or anybody, that this is a run-of-the-river project. Why are we making such an issue? I mean, the decline in water supply before Dulhasti-II comes on and after Dulhasti-II comes on is not going to be substantially different, because run-of-the-river projects don't actually store the water. They store it for the hydroelectric purposes, and then it goes back into the river, you know. And then we are building a pondage which is using some other rivers also as tributaries. So I don't think that in the end this is going to be that much of an effect, but it's always a huge talking point in Pakistan. But I think there's absolutely no doubt that the time has come, because we want to end Pakistan's counter-terrorist, Pakistan's use of state-sponsored terrorist groups like Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed and others. We want to stop that. Their using of these groups for terrorist activities in India, and you know, their constant you know, pressure on this point. Of course, India has taken very strong counter-terrorist measures, and we saw in Operation Sindoor that we are more than capable of stopping any kind of attempts that Pakistan may have to launch attacks on India. But still, I think this whole issue of terrorism, I think it's a very good thing to bring it on the world stage in the context of water, because then people will realize. Otherwise, people have just been dismissing India's concern. Oh, no, water is important, but terrorism is not important. As though people dying through terrorism, how you destroy infrastructure, how you affect the lives of people, that's also important. So I think that we are within our rights. And also we have been repeatedly saying in global and bilateral meetings on the IWT that it's an unfair treaty. It needs to be redone. It needs to be revised. We've been asking for its revision for decades, and Pakistan has never agreed to that. So there are a number of reasons why putting into abeyance makes a lot of sense, and I think we should go ahead with that.
You know, General Kocher, just to bring it in perspective, a lot of people say that this is, you know, if we can do something like this to Pakistan, you know, the China will step up pressure in context of Brahmaputra. Is it correct hypothesis or wrong?
No, I don't think this hypothesis is actually correct, because China does not have right now the wherewithal to make much difference to the flow in Brahmaputra, though of course there is a lot of talk of a number of dams in Tibet and
run of the river. They also said we are making just run of the river dams.
No, it's not going to affect. See, I'll give you a small example. Why this UN cry? 138 MAF Pakistan is getting. Jhelum is only 25 MAF, and most of our hydro power projects are on Chenab. I'm sorry, I stand actually corrected. Chenab is only 25 MAF, and Pakistan is getting 138 MAF. We are not tinkering with any of the other rivers except Chenab, because Chenab has a steep gradient, and therefore the hydro power projects are easier to do it, and we get much of power out of it. So I think Pakistan needs to understand one thing: we are only building run-of-the-river projects on Chenab. None of the projects are there on Indus, Jhelum, which is affecting the water flow. So they are making it an unnecessary political issue, unnecessary security issue, because it has got no basis. Because still, more than 60% of the water is coming to Pakistan. We are not stopping it.
Absolutely.
So, Pakistan needs to understand this logic, which possibly I think the people of Pakistan seem to be quite gullible in the hands of the politicians, and the kind of narrative where the Pakistani media and Pakistani army is trying to give to the people that India is trying to do this. India is not trying to do anything. We are only making run of the river hydrocarbon, pontage is allowed. You see, if you look at the treaty, pontage is allowed, spillaways are allowed, and flushing is allowed. And India is only doing these three things. We have not altered the designs. We have not made any new dams.
I think Pakistan is worried that it's not business as usual. I think that's the important point, and what the government had declared post Operation Sindoor or during Operation Sindoor. I think they continue to work on it. I think that is why these statements are coming, that this is our national security, we can take steps. But the fact of the matter is, India has neither violated the rule. Only thing India has done is to press for an unfair treaty to be amended or changed, which suits the interest of both the countries. Thank you both of you for joining me on this issue. India goes ahead with the Dulhasti power project, which is very much required for the people of Jammu Kashmir. So this was on point 1. Coming up next on point 2, US warns Iran after 7 killed in widespread protests. US is locked and loaded. This was US President Donald Trump's warning to Tehran. It comes amid widespread protest in the Islamic Republic of Iran. At least 7 people have been killed and hundreds injured. Many are calling this a demonstration against high inflation. The Iranian president has said that the people are dissatisfied at the government and it is their fault. In what appears to be an open rift in Tehran, Pezeshkian has said to his own government not to go after America as the one to blame, which is very, very important, because Iranian system of governance is divided between what Ayatollahs run and what an elected prime minister or the premier can do. But the Islamic Republic has made global headlines time and again for the issues on which global community has reacted. For example, curtailing women's freedom, mandatory hijab, crackdown on ethnic and minority communities, silencing dissent, and actively supporting military radicals like Hamas and Hezbollah abroad. Given the history of protests and the Islamic Republic's response, the death may mark the start of a heavier-handed response by the Revolutionary Guards and the besieged over the demonstrations. While the demonstrations have slowed in the capital, they have expanded in other areas. The fatalities occurred in 4 cities, largely home to Iran's Lur ethnic group. Iran's civilian government under reformist President Masoud Pezeshkian has been trying to signal that it wants to negotiate with the protesters. However, he has acknowledged that nothing much can be done right now. He says Iran's currency has rapidly depreciated, with $1 now costing some 1.4 million riyals.
مردم ناراضی هستند. ما مقصریم. شما مقصرید. دنبال آمریکا نگردید، دنبال نمیدونم کسی دیگه نرید. ماییم که باید خدمت بدیم به اونا از ما راضی باشن. ماییم باید که منابعمون رو درست مدیریت کنیم. ماییم باید راه پیدا کنیم و مشکل حل کنیم.
The protests in the Washington Strait come 6 months after US bombed Iranian nuclear sites during the Iran's 12-day war with Israel. Iran has said it is no longer enriching uranium at any site in the country. Meanwhile, Ali Lariani, the senior advisor to Ayatollah Khamenei, has warned the US against interference. He said that the US meddling in Iranian protests would lead to chaos across the region. And the big question I asked today is, can there be a regime change in Iran? And what makes Iranian regime so persistent and tight? On this issue, I am joined by Catherine Perez Shakdam, expert on West Asia, and Professor Swaran Singh, Center for International Studies, JNU. Catherine joins me from London. Catherine, your opening comments on what's happening inside Iran.
Okay, so the first thing, thank you for having me, by the way, and Happy New Year. What I wanted to say is that, look, it has nothing to do with inflation. Everything that you see currently in the streets has everything to do with Iranians saying no to Ayatollah Khamenei and the regime in general. They have lived under occupation for decades. This regime came by way of a coup d'etat. They call it a revolution. It wasn't a revolution. A revolution would mean that people wanted change to take place. What happened was, it was a hijacking of the left, who made an alliance with Islamic radicals, impersonified by Ayatollah Khomeini at the time. And Khamenei was quick to take over. So what you see is an attempt by the regime, by the Islamofascists, to continue to grab hold of a country and 80 million people within it and prevent them to breathe. Because really, what we're talking about in Iran is the inability that Iranians have to breathe, to choose the manner in which they dress, to choose whether they feel they want to pursue a particular religion or another, or not at all. They have zero freedom, they have no say, and women are treated like cattle. And I think it needs to change.
Okay. Professor Swaran Singh, your opening comments, and then I get down to the larger issue of, do you think that these protests really make a difference to IRGC and Ayatollah?
I think the protests definitely reflect the discomfort that people feel. But two things are important to understand. One, Iran is not the only country that could be described the way my co-panelists just mentioned about the freedoms that are available to people in Iran. Several neighboring countries could be likewise described. Second, that repeatedly there have been instability, whether it is in terms of palace intrigues. For example, in 1989, when the last Ayatollah passed away, there were largest number of executions, more than 1,500 that year. We had similar protests in 2009, then 2022, and now. So repeatedly protests happening, some kind of increasing instability at the level of leadership or people on the street is a reflection of things not being fine. Now, some of that could also be externally orchestrated, which I think is also a part that needs to be understood, that how again and again the whole focus on isolating Iran has resulted in enormous sanctions and therefore, economic troubles for Iran, which has, a main source of earning for them is oil in that sense. And if that kind of foreign trade export is denied to them, obviously that leads to economic problems, unemployment, unrest, and so on. And so it's a complex picture where what is very certain here is that repeatedly instability and turmoil has not really so far managed to, remove the regime, which, as my co-panelists mentioned, is in occupation for last 45 plus years in Iran. And in that sense, despite, talks about factions and frictions within the regime, the fact that they have still institutions which, you could look at them either as opportunities for adaptation and change or illusions of adaptation and change, but there is elections, there's parliament, there are councils that perhaps create at least orchestration of people looking at possibilities of change and adaptation in the regime. And I think in that sense, broad-based cohesion within various organs of the government, led by the supreme leader, have so far managed to survive for 45 years, as we are saying. But regime change is something which can't be predicted so easily. These things happen out of blue. One after another examples are there. But people on the ground, as they are unhappy, they also see that turmoil and instability in the neighborhood, whether it is Syria or Libya or Iraq, has created greater problems after foreign intervention was made. So they will also be cautious of seeking any foreign intervention. So I think that kind of complex picture so far looks like very difficult to predict as to which way things are going.
Okay. Catherine, these protests, are these about women, inflation, culture, rights? 20 years ago when, the social media, came into people's life, there was a Twitter revolution which took place in Tehran. In fact, a book came out of it, People were tweeting a lot of things. It was more about culture. So how do we, in which perspective are we supposed to frame these protests which have broken out?
Look, again, I don't think it's not just one element. I think it's been a combination of things that took place over the past decades. I believe that Iranians have no more ground to give in terms of their freedom, in terms of the brutality that they face at the hands of the regime. When everything has been taken away from you, and more importantly, your future, Iranians today are facing a reality where it is better to be dead than to face another day under that kind of regime. And I want people to think about this, because when you see mothers who have everything to lose, including their children, with the very real possibility that their loved one will be taken to Evin prison as well, just for fun, because the regime likes to toy with people. And you understand that those women are still willing to face the guns and the cannons, you need to understand that something is terribly wrong with this picture. So when you see Iranians take to the streets and they burn down RGC bases and they call on people to defect, in essence, to Reza Shah, the Crown Prince of Iran, who has made several repeated calls for support from the international community and from within the diaspora, as well as within Iran. You understand that, again, Iranians have made the decision that enough is enough. And so I don't want to frame this. I think that for the first time, what you're looking at is actually a real revolution. And I think there's a beautiful symmetry. When the Shah, the late Shah, left, we misunderstood. The man left because he believed that he could find help in the likes of America and the West. What he didn't realize is that he had been betrayed, and that the left decided to enable, and I have to say that the French government has a lot to answer to enable the arrival of a cleric, believing that they would be able to manipulate him into giving up the best, what Iran had best to give, which is its natural resources. Now, it didn't work out because, you know how history went. France got frozen out, and things went from bad to worse. So this, what you see, is a revolution in the sense that they are reclaiming the land that was stolen away from them, but their future. So when you see young people in the streets calling for the end of the regime, it's not just, a state of let's go on the internet and let's create a buzz. No, they want their lives back. They want a future. They want to be able to say, I'm gonna have a family one day. I'm gonna raise children, and those kids will be free. I don't think that people understand to which point people cannot breathe in Iran. Everything has been taken away from people. And it's very difficult when you're here in the West and you enjoy the freedoms that we do enjoy very much, to understand what it feels like to have no choice whatsoever about in the manner in which you dress or how you pray, who you pray to, whether you're an ethnic minority or just basically a woman. And again, women are reduced to nothing. I was in Iran and I saw the way that they treat women. It's appalling.